Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Course Studio. Welcome to the show. So today's episode comes to you courtesy of Caleb, who's been supporting this channel as a general tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without support from amazing patrons like Caleb, so again, Caleb, thank you so much. And for the personalized deck tech, Caleb chose Ashling the Pilgrim, wanting to see how safe and fun we can make blowing everything up. So let's jump into Ashling. Ashling is a 1/1 elemental shaman for 1 in a red that says, pay 1 in a red, put a +1 counter on Ashling the Pilgrim. If this is the 3rd time this ability has resolved this turn, remove all counters from Ashling and it deals that much damage to each creature and each player. So Ashling is a time bomb just waiting to go off. So yeah, we can basically just keep putting counter after counter after counter onto our commander. And yeah, we can just keep doing that as much as we want, essentially, for as much mana as we have throughout the game. And when we actually need to deal with, say, well, the board and some players, well, we just activate this 3 times in a singular turn. We remove all those counters and we wipe everything out. Now, do keep in mind, obviously, this does hit both Ashling and ourself, but that is a price that we are willing to pay. And of course, we also have ways to ensure that we can actually keep Ashling alive and even get even other benefits out of it. So yeah, a commander that definitely has a lot of cool avenues and a lot of cool things that you can do with it, and a commander that can be quite, well, explosive. Now, on this episode, like my other deck techs, every single card in this deck, including the commander, is less than $1, so it's a very budget-friendly deck. Also, on this deck tech, as I take you through these different cards, I'm going to be taking you through even tactics that show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. Now, with all that said, let's jump into those cards. So, first up, of course, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, a fantastic form of ramp. Pay 2, tap, and sacrifice. Go get a basic land. Yeah, what's not to love? Moving on, next up, we've got some awesome mana rocks as well. Arcane Signet, Felwar Stone, and Mind Stone are each going to be able to tap, well, for, either a red or a colorless, depending on what they are. But yeah, it's a monocolored deck, so it's fine. Pay 1, tap, and sacrifice the Mind Stone, draw a card 2. Can be great to replace it if we need to. Next up, we got Fractured Power Stone, Liquid Metal Torque, and Prismatic Lens, each of which, yes, cost 2 and tap for 1. And yes, Liquid Metal Torque can also turn non-land permanents into artifacts, which can help with removal. And Prismatic Lens, we probably won't need to filter mana, but if we do, we can. And then we've got some more 2-mana mana rocks. These actually enter the battlefield tapped, but again, still very efficient at 2 mana with Ebony Fly, Star Compass, and Fire Diamond. Ebony Fly only taps for a colorless, but we can also turn into a fly, which also gives something else flying, including our commander. Star Compass and Fire Diamond both just tap for red, essentially, but yeah, can definitely be very effective sources of ramp. And of course, we're not done with ramp just yet. Unstable Obelisk costs 1 more, but we can also utilize it by sacrificing it and paying 7 to destroy target permanent. And yeah, there are certain kinds of permanents that we struggle with dealing with, so that can very much make a big impact in the right situation. Next up, Glittering Stockpile also costs 3, and this one can actually kind of build up counters on it, essentially, so we can utilize it for a big splash of mana when we need it. Speaking of big splash of mana, Everflowing Chalice, a great artifact, multi-kicker too. Basically, it's going to tap for half the amount of mana that we put into it. Now, you might think we're done with ramping, but we're not done just yet. Because, moving on, we've got some more mana rocks that tap for even more mana. Victory Chimes, okay, well, it only taps for 1 mana, but it can tap for 1 mana each turn. And again, when you've got a commander that has an activated ability like ours, this can provide a ton of value throughout the game. Coalition Relic also doesn't necessarily tap for 2, but we can essentially store up mana on 1 turn, then it can basically add 2 mana on the next turn. Worn Power Stone, though, might enter the battlefield tap, but this one does tap for 2. Moving on, Empowered Auto Generator can basically build up counters on it and add a ton of mana throughout the game. And then Sisei's Ring and her Golem's Eye both don't add up, any counters on them, but they both just tap for 2, which can be, well, fantastic. Again, our commander can be a great mana sink for us, and these mana rocks that tap for more than 1 can be very, very, very effective. So, we're going to be running even more. Firemind Vessel and Stone Speaker Crystal, each tap for 2 essentially. Firemind Vessel enters battlefield taps for 2 mana different colors, and Stone Speaker Crystal, well, we can utilize it for another function. Pay 2, tap, sacrifice it, exile any number of target players' graveyards, and we draw a card. Speaking of sacrificing, Hedron Archive. Same cost to sacrifice, but in this case, we draw 2 cards, and then Dreamstone Hedron is a bigger version of this, essentially. Taps for 3, sacrifices for 3 cards. Now, when it comes to mana rocks, we might be done, but of course, we've got some other effects that can help us get even more mana throughout the game. Descent into Avernus. This one can be fantastic in combination with our commander. Beginning of our upkeep, we get 2 descent counters on it. Then each player gets X treasure tokens, and it's also going to deal that much damage to each player for X number of counters on it. So yeah, this just keeps building up more and more counters, which means more and more treasures that we can utilize and more damage to our opponents, who are already going to be taking a lot of damage from our commander. And of course, when it comes to ritual effects, well, Mana Geyser can give us an absurd amount of mana. Add red for each tap land your opponent's control. Yeah, in a multiplayer game like Commander, that can be a crazy amount. Rousing Refrain can also help us out as well. Add red for each card in target opponent's hand until end of turn. You don't lose mana 7 phase end. And it's also going to basically resuspend itself for 3 every single time. So we just keep getting this repeatable mana throughout the game from this card. Okay, now we're done with ramping, so what's next? Well, next up, we've got some ways to build counters onto our commander in a different way because, yeah, I mean, outside of just dumping a ton of mana into our commander, which we obviously can, and it can be very effective, we can also use other methods to get counters on her to help out. Ring of Valkis, a great way to do that, gives haste and also gets a counter on our upkeep. Army of Iroas, whenever the equipped creature attacks, we get a counter on it, and yeah, our commander can start hitting really hard. Speaking of which, Sword of Hours can really help out. Whenever it attacks, get a counter on it, and whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, we roll a d12. If the result is greater than the damage dealt or the result is 12, we double the number of counters on that creature. So yeah, that can really spice things up quite quickly. Speaking of spicy, Agitator Ant. Yeah, this can lead to some very interesting situations in Commander. At the beginning of our end step, each player may put 2 counters on a creature they control, and then each creature that got counters on this way gets goated. So yeah, they're going to start swinging out at everyone but us. Next up, Economy of Celebration. Whenever a modified creature control attacks, exile the top card of your library, you may play a card this turn. So Impulse Draw, and yeah, we're going to be attacking with our commander. And whenever you cast a spell from exile, you get a counter to our creature you control. So basically, this is just a very symbiotic relationship. We attack with our commander, which is going to have a counter on it. We get an Impulse Draw. We cast an Impulse Draw. We get a counter on our commander. What's not to love? Moving on, Drillworks Mole, a 1/1 that we can pay 2 to get a counter on it, and also on our commander. And then Scavenged Brawler. This can get a ton of great things on our commander. By paying 5 and exiling this from our graveyard, we choose target creature. We get 4+1 counters on that creature, a flying counter, a vigilance counter, a trample counter, and a lifelink counter. So this can be a massive boon for our commander. And yeah, that lifelink can be quite great. Because again, whenever our commander is dealing out that damage that it's going to be doing, you know, whether through attacking or, you know, also through its ability, well, we can gain a ton of life from that. Thank you to that lifelink counter. But of course, we're nowhere near done with making our commander more powerful just yet. So next up, we've got some other great equipment like Blackblade Reforged, which is going to pump our commander for each land we control. Stratascythe, which basically does the exact same thing, but, well, just for mountains. And then Slagworm Armor, which is going to give our commander +0/+6, which is a huge difference for our commander because, again, our commander loses all those counters when we activate for the 3rd time. So increasing that toughness can be a great way to try to survive that commander blast. Now, as good as all these cards are in this stack, there is one, in my opinion, that stands above the rest, and that is the Golden Pig of this stack, which, of course, is the #1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig of this stack is Sanctuary Blade. It's an equipment for 2 that says when it comes attached to a creature, choose a color. In this case, we're going to choose red. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has protection from the last chosen color. So this pumps our commander's, attack, which is great, some extra power. What's not to like about that? But more importantly, getting protection from red is massive because, well, Ashling's not going to be taking itself out anymore thanks to that. Again, Ashling deals damage to everything, all creatures, all players, but now, well, it's not going to be dealing damage to itself because that protection from red is going to protect it from that damage. So, yeah, our repeatable board white commander is now going to stay in play so we can rebuild quicker. So yeah, Sanctuary Blade can make a massive difference, and that is why it is the Golden Pig of this deck. But of course, We are also going to be running another piece of equipment, Swiftfoot Boots, which is a great piece of equipment as well. Not quite as good as Sanctuary Blade, in my opinion, but yeah, Hexproof and Haste. What's not to love about that? Protecting us from our opponent's spells and being able to swing right away with it. Now, actually, the way I just said that last part, you might think we're done with equipment. We are not. We've got other ways to empower our commander. Moving on, we're also going to be running some fantastic piece of equipment that gives some fantastic keywords like Gorgon's Head and Quietus Spike, each of which are going to give our commander Death Touch, which is huge. Because, again, our commander is going to be dishing out damage to all creatures, and all we need to do now is dish out 1 damage to every single creature, and it is going to get taken out. Every single creature will get taken out, even with the tiniest amount of damage from our commander, if our commander has Death Touch. On top of that, Quietus Spike also can drain an opponent a ton if we get through with our commander, so that's nice as well. But yeah, Death Touch, a fantastic keyword with our commander. Next up, Loxodon Warhammer and Batterbone also introduce another keyword that we already talked about with Lifelink. Yeah, giving our commander Lifelink can be huge. Warhammer also pumps +3/+0 and Trample, and Batterbone gives Vigilance and +1/+1, both of which are nice, but again, Lifelink is really what we care about here, gaining a ton of life when we utilize our commander as a board wipe. But of course, when our commander does dish out all that damage, there's even more ways that we can take advantage of it. So, next up, let's talk about Brash Taunter and Stuffy Doll, each of which actually want us to deal damage to them. Brash Taunter is indestructible. Whenever it's dealt damage, deals that much damage to target opponent, and we can also fight another creature. And then Stuffy Doll, when it enters the battlefield, choose a player. It's also indestructible. Whenever it's dealt damage, it can deal that much damage to the chosen player. So each of these say basically, hey, hit me with a bunch of damage, and I will go hit that player for you. So this is just a nice additional way to pump out some extra damage to an opponent throughout the game with our commander. Speaking of which, Ill-Tempered Loner / Hellpack Avenger, another great way to do this as well. Basically the exact same thing on the front, but not indestructible. And then Hellpack Avenger on the back says, whenever a permanent you control is dealt damage, Hellpack's going to deal that much damage to any target. So this counts all of our permanents, which is kind of crazy again with our commander. So yeah, that can be a big, massive blowout play. And actually, we even have other ways to take advantage of the damage our commander dishes out with cards like Blazing Sunsteel, Fiendlash, and Arcbond. Sunsteel says, whenever a creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any target. Fiendlash is very similar, but it's going to deal damage based on its power, target player or planeswalker. And Arcbond says, choose target creature. Whenever that creature is dealt damage this turn, it's going to deal that much damage to each other creature and each player. So this is kind of like a chain reaction in a way with our commander. We utilize its effect to deal a ton of damage. We, pick one creature essentially with this that's going to be dealt damage, and then we just repeat that damage on everything. So yeah, it can be a massive play. Speaking of massive plays, if we need to reset the board, we can utilize Neverall's Disc to do that. Enters tap, pay 1, tap, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. But of course, we also have some single target removal as well, with cards like Chaos Warp, which can just warp something away, Abrade, which can destroy an artifact or deal 3 damage, and you find some prisoners, which can be some great impulse draw from an opponent, or we can destroy target artifact. But with all these great cards, you might be thinking, how exactly do we get to all these great cards? Well, we're going to start things off with Sad Robot. That's right, Solemn Simulacrum ramps us 1 land, and also when it dies, we draw a card. Next up, Tormenting Voice, and through a possibility to do the exact same thing, but different speeds. Discard 1 card to draw 2. In a very similar way, we've got some more looting and draw effects. Faithless Looting, draw 2, discard 2. Cathartic Reunion, discard 2, draw 3. Seize the Spoils, discard 1, draw 2, get a treasure. And in some bigger ways, we've got Big Score, Unexpected Windfall, and Pirate's Pillage, which all basically do the exact same thing. Discard 1 card, draw 2, get 2 treasures. And again, those treasures can definitely help us out throughout the game. Again, utilizing, them for spells, or, just dumping them into our commander's ability. Moving on, Visions of Phyrexia. Beginning of your upkeep, exile top card of your library. Play it this turn, so Impulse Draw. And at the beginning of your end step, if you didn't play a card from exile this turn, you get a Power Stone token. Does come into play tap, but again, that's a great resource for our commander's ability. And then Tectonic Reformation lets all of our lands have cycling in our hand, and Magus the Wheel can be sacrificed so that we can actually have every one wheel. So yeah, if we need to refill our hand, this is a great option. But now that we've talked about every single non-land card in this deck, let's talk about the lands. First up, we've got Hall of Oracles and Opal Palace, which can get a counter on our commander, and Tyrite Sanctum, which can actually get an indestructible counter on our commander, which can be huge. Moving on, Rogue's Passage can get our commander through, Myriad Landscape can help ramp us, and Spinerock Knoll has Hideaway, so we can utilize that when we dish out a certain amount of damage. And to round things out, we've got mountains, mountains, and mountains. Yeah, that's right, a lot of basics for this deck as well. But now that we've talked about every single card in this deck, let's talk about the price. And like I mentioned at the start of this episode, every single card in this deck, including the commander, is less than $1, so it's a very budget-friendly deck with an estimated cost of just $23.29. And actually, you might be able to save even more on that cost by buying this deck on TCG Player and utilizing heavily played and damage cards, which of course need a home too. Though, do keep in mind that this estimated cost does not include the cost of basic lands or shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed the deck tech, and yeah, if you are interested in this deck, make sure you check out that deck list link in the description below. And of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.